Forget the dinosaurs. The real apex predator ruled the oceans, not the land. 85 million years ago, the seas covered 80% of the planet, a more violent, unforgiving world than any terrestrial landscape. Continents were islands. Coastlines stretched across what is now the American heartland. The water was warm, the currents were brutal, and the competition was absolute. The creature that dominated this realm wasn't a relic from the Triassic. It wasn't a holdover from an earlier age. It was born from something small, desperate, and terrestrial. Something that should have stayed on land. By the time the asteroid fell, mosasaurs had conquered every ocean on Earth. They hunted in the tropical seaways. They prowled the polar waters of Antarctica. They invaded freshwater rivers and estuaries, places where no marine reptile had ventured before. Yet today they're forgotten, overshadowed by dinosaurs, misclassified as prehistoric curiosities, relegated to the margins of popular imagination. This is the story of how a 3-foot lizard became the most successful apex predator the planet has ever seen. To understand how mosasaurs rose to dominance, we must first understand what they replaced. The Cretaceous greenhouse world had no polar ice caps. Sea levels were 80% higher than today. The western interior seaway stretched from Nevada to the Arctic Circle, a vast inland sea that covered the heart of North America. The waters were warm, stable, and for millions of years they belonged to the same families of predators. For 100 million years, ichthyosaurs and pliosaurs ruled the deep. These were not primitive creatures. They were perfectly adapted apex predators, specialized hunters locked into their ecological roles. The ichthyosaurs were sleek, built for speed, their bodies streamlined like modern dolphins. The pliosaurs were massive, short-necked behemoths with skulls the size of cars, built for crushing force and ambush. Together, they had carved out every significant hunting niche in the ocean. Then came the collapse. Around 94 million years ago, submarine volcanism choked the oceans of oxygen. The water became a dead zone. Entire regions of the seafloor became anoxic, unable to support complex life. This was Oceanic Anoxic Event 2, OAE2. It wasn't a gradual decline, it was catastrophic. Ichthyosaurs vanished almost overnight. Pliosaurs began their slow extinction, their specialized bodies unable to adapt to the changing world. The opening was complete. Entire ecological niches emptied in geological moments. The top predator role, the mid-water hunter role, the coastal scavenger role. All vacant. All waiting. Who filled the void? Not the sharks. Sharks were survivors, but they were generalists. They lacked the size, the speed, the coordination to claim the throne. Not the remaining pliosaurs. They were too specialized, too committed to their old strategies. A small, unassuming group of terrestrial lizards filled the space. Ichthyosaurs, 3 feet long, semi-aquatic, hunting in shallow coastal waters while still returning to land, fleeing from dinosaurs, barely surviving. They were generalists, adaptable, hungry, and they were about to evolve faster than any vertebrate in Earth's history. These weren't creatures locked into a single hunting strategy. They weren't bound by millions of years of specialized evolution. They were blank slates, written in genetic code, ready to be rewritten by the pressure of an empty ocean. The Mosasaur dynasty was about to begin. In just 25 million years, mosasaurs underwent a metamorphosis that defies conventional evolutionary timescales. The starting point was impossibly small. Ichthyosaurs, 3 feet long. Semi-aquatic hunters prowling the shallow margins between land and sea. They hunted fish, they scavenged. They survived by being quick enough to escape the dinosaurs that dominated the terrestrial world. These were creatures at the mercy of a hostile planet, forced into the water not by opportunity, but by desperation. Then the ocean opened. Within 6 million years, ichthyosaurs evolved into something called Dallosaurus. This fossil, discovered in 1989 in Dallas, Texas, revealed the impossible transition. The bones told a story of radical transformation. Webbed feet, an elongated body, no longer capable of walking on land. The ocean had claimed it completely. This wasn't a creature experimenting with aquatic life. This was a creature committed to it, burning its bridges to the terrestrial world. Within 25 million years, they reached 50 feet, evolution on overdrive. The timescale is staggering when you consider what was changing. Not just size, everything. The skeleton was being rewritten, the muscles were being reorganized, the sensory systems were being rebuilt from the ground up. But size alone doesn't explain their dominance. Something else was happening at the cellular level. Isotopic analysis of their tooth enamel reveals the truth. Mosasaurs were endothermic, warm-blooded. They maintained body temperatures around 36 degrees Celsius regardless of seawater temperature. This wasn't gigantothermy, the passive warming of massive bodies. This was active metabolic control. Their bodies generated heat, burning fuel constantly to maintain that internal fire. Why does this matter? Everything. High activity levels, burst speeds for hunting, the ability to expand into polar regions where cold-blooded predators couldn't survive, faster growth, faster reproduction. A warm-blooded predator in a cold world is a predator without limits. The jaw transformation was where the real horror emerged. Mosasaurs inherited the flexible, multi-hinged skull of their lizard ancestors, but they weaponized it. The lower jaw developed an intramandibular joint, a flexible hinge in the middle of the bone itself. This allowed the jaw to bow outward, to flex, to adapt to prey of any shape. But that was just the beginning. They evolved pterygoid teeth, a second battery of teeth on the roof of the mouth. These curved inward like a ratcheting mechanism, like the teeth of a conveyor belt designed to pull prey backward toward the throat. Once something was caught in those jaws, escape was not an option. No amount of thrashing could dislodge it. The more it struggled, the deeper it went. The tail transformed from a round, snake-like appendage into a massive, flattened paddle. The vertebrae developed expanded bony struts top and bottom, creating a structure that could generate explosive power. Estimated top speed: 30 miles per hour in short bursts. Not built for marathon chases, but for ambush and acceleration. The sensory systems were rebuilt entirely. Hearing was modified from a terrestrial ear into a 38 times amplification system for detecting vibrations in water. The forked tongue, inherited from monitor lizard ancestors, allowed stereo olfaction, smelling in two directions simultaneously. And along the upper jaw, specialized nerves developed that could detect pressure waves given off by prey, a kind of sonar system similar to echolocation in killer whales. The result was an animal that could locate prey in murky water, accelerate to 30 miles per hour, grab it with jaws that couldn't be escaped, and swallow it whole using a ratcheting mechanism no other ocean predator possessed. Evolution had created something unprecedented, a perfect hunter, and it was only getting started. The Mosasaur's bite wasn't just powerful, it was a system of interlocking horrors designed to ensure nothing survived. Estimates suggest the largest mosasaurs could exert bite forces comparable to or exceeding that of a Tyrannosaurus rex, over 4,000 pounds per square inch. A single bite could break the neck of a large shark or pliosaur. The first bite was often lethal. The prey didn't need to be killed slowly. It was over before the animal understood what was happening. But the bite force was only the beginning. The real killing system was far more sophisticated. Once teeth hooked prey, the mosasaur's flexible jaw system allowed it to move the upper and lower jaws independently. The pterygoid teeth would grip and pull backward. The main teeth would hold firm. The prey was drawn inexorably down the throat. Escape was not an option. Not then, not ever. Biomechanical models reveal a mosasaur could consume 4 feet of flesh in a single bite. A 20-foot animal could be consumed in 5 bites, an adult human in 1 gulp. No chewing, no hesitation. Pure consumption. But not all mosasaurs hunted the same way. Specialization emerged as different species carved out their own niches. Mosasaurus was the generalist, sharp conical teeth for fish and cephalopods. The apex generalist, capable of hunting anything in its environment. Globidens was different. Bulbous, mushroom-shaped teeth for crushing shells. The duraphage. Ammonites and sea turtles were its prey. Their shells no match for those grinding teeth. Prognathodon was the giant killer. massive teeth, and a heavy skull built for extreme bite force. Evidence suggests it hunted other marine reptiles, even other mosasaurs. The competition they faced was brutal. Mosasaurs didn't dominate unopposed. Sharks like the Ginsu shark reached 25 feet, 10 feet longer than a modern great white. Fossil evidence shows young mosasaurs bore bite marks from these giants. Severed fins, chunks of flesh torn away. The young didn't always survive. But as mosasaurs grew, the equation inverted. Adult mosasaurs could hunt the hunters. The fossil record from the Kansas chalk reveals the hierarchy. Severed shark fins found in mosasaur stomach cavities. Mosasaur bones with massive bite marks, then regurgitated and left on the sea floor. The apex predator had established itself through violence. Perhaps most shocking was what happened between mosasaurs themselves. They killed other mosasaurs, and not always to eat them. Fossil skulls bear puncture wounds matching the teeth of larger mosasaurs. Broken necks at 45-degree angles to the skull. Evidence suggests wrestling matches that turned deadly. Dominance contests that ended in death. This behavior is rare in the animal kingdom. Even great white sharks and saltwater crocodiles don't deliberately kill their own kind for reasons other than food. Mosasaurs were different. They killed for territory, for breeding rights, for power. The fossil record documents this violence. A mosasaur skull crushed by another's bite. The victim's neck wrenched sideways, the vertebrae snapped. The killer left the corpse behind, uneaten. A statement, a warning, a declaration of dominance. By 70 million years ago, mosasaurs had spread to every continent. Over 50 species evolved, each filling a different niche. Some invaded freshwater rivers and estuaries. Some hunted in the tropical shallows. Some prowled the open ocean, miles from any coast. Nothing on Earth could stop them. The reign of the mosasaur was absolute. For 25 million years, they were the undisputed masters of the planet's waters. No competitor emerged. No predator challenged them. They had achieved what no other apex predator in Earth's history had achieved. Complete, global, uncontested dominance. Then, 66 million years ago, the sky fell. The mosasaur's extinction wasn't a failure of evolution. It was the extinction of success itself. 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide chunk of rock traveling at 45,000 miles per hour struck the Yucatan Peninsula. The energy release was equivalent to every nuclear weapon on Earth detonated simultaneously, multiplied by 1,000. Shockwaves rippled across the planet. Earthquakes triggered volcanoes on distant continents. Mega tsunamis raced across the oceans, drowning coastlines that had stood for millions of years. A cloud of superheated dust and vaporized rock filled the atmosphere. Sunlight was blocked out almost entirely for months. Temperatures plummeted. Photosynthesis stopped. The base of the ocean food web collapsed in darkness. Marine phytoplankton died. Without sunlight, they couldn't survive. Fish populations crashed. Sharks, which feed on fish, began to starve. Mosasaurs, at the very top of the trophic pyramid, faced a world without prey. The endothermic adaptation that made mosasaurs supreme became their death sentence. Warm-blooded animals require constant food to maintain body heat. In a world without food, they couldn't slow their metabolism like cold-blooded reptiles. They burned through their reserves and starved. Their own perfection had become their vulnerability. 75% of all species on Earth vanished, the mosasaurs among them. Some may have survived months or years in isolated pockets, clinging to life in shrinking refuges. But the end was inevitable. The reign of the ocean's true apex predator was over. The what-if haunts paleontologists. If that asteroid had missed, mosasaurs would still rule the oceans today. Whales wouldn't exist. Dolphins wouldn't exist. Seals and sea lions wouldn't exist. Fishermen would find nothing to catch. Humans might never have taken to the sea. The world would belong to the mosasaurs. The mosasaur was not a dinosaur. It was something rarer, a perfect predator. In 25 million years, it transformed from a desperate coastal lizard into the most successful apex predator Earth has ever known. It hunted in every ocean. It invaded freshwater rivers. It killed its own kind for dominance. And then, in an instant, it vanished. We forgot the mosasaur because we never knew it. The fossil record tells its story, but the public imagination belongs to the dinosaurs. Yet the truth remains. The ocean's true tyrant was never a dinosaur at all. It was a lizard. And it was perfect. If you want to keep exploring the giants we forgot, hit subscribe and join the expedition.